Sidearms are definitely the new hotness in the Crucible. This video will go over which archetypes work best in PvP and what perks you should go for to maximize your pew-pews. Sidearms are broken up into about 5 separate archetypes, varying from max rate of fire but an impact of 6 to a much lower rate of fire but an impact of 15. I say there's about 5 archetypes. Dreg's Promise is kind of its own in between the slowest and medium rate of fire archetypes. I'll still count it because, reasons. There are 2 exotic burst fire sidearms to consider as well, the previously mentioned Dreg's Promise and the Trespasser. Both of them fire in 3-round bursts and have some niche circumstances where they can really excel. Let's start off with the fastest rate of fire archetypes. I'm covering these 2 together because you won't really be able to tell the difference when using them. Their damage is okay provided you're landing your shots, but their rate of fire is the real crippling flaw. It's unbelievably difficult to make use of the max rate of fire because you have to pull the trigger for each shot. Yeah, that's how guns work. There's so little time between each shot that you're more than likely going to undersample your rounds and then lose out on that perfect rate of fire. To put it in layman's terms, you can't pull the trigger fast enough without sacrificing accuracy. When you're able to accurately land your shots at the intended rate of fire, these archetypes will put in some work though, especially if you have some sort of damage boost like reactive reload on them. However, that doesn't set them apart enough to warrant use in this heavily sidearm-based meta. For one thing, they don't spawn with more ammo than the other archetypes, and they don't hold more ammo in the magazine. So unless you are perfect with your shots, you're going to use more ammo. For PvP, just stay away from this archetype. The next archetype is probably the one that you will have seen the most of. The medium rate of fire, low impact variety features the ever-present Wormwood, as well as old favorites like Conviction 2 and the old Iron Banner sidearm. This is probably the most forgiving archetype since it's pretty easy to hit the max rate of fire by spamming the trigger. In addition, the optimal shots to kill doesn't change much between body shots and headshots. The optimal perks for this archetype are usually some sort of range increases like Hammerforged or Rangefinder. I wouldn't get rifled as you're constantly reloading with a sidearm, and that increased time really does add up if you're having a short time between engagements. I also like to have something that helps with the equip speed like Quick Draw. It only makes a few frames of difference, but that little extra bit of snappiness really helps if you're aiming to peg people down after landing some shots with a primary, or swap to it after someone pushes you unexpectedly. High caliber rounds is also a fantastic perk to go for since it does increase the flinch. I was going to do a video on this, but G-Intellectual got to it first. In a meta where primaries are mostly used, having a secondary that can wreck people's aiming is going to be pretty damn strong. Fortunately, you don't have to look far as the vendor Wormwood has everything I've been talking about. It has your choice between high caliber rounds or quick draw, Hammerforged, and finally Hidden Hand, which bumps up the aim assist to stupid levels. The final slowest archetype of sidearms is actually pretty similar to the previous medium rate of fire ones. They have a slightly slower time to kill, but you do benefit by having your damage extended out just a little bit further due to that higher impact. The biggest downside is that in a meta where sidearms are heavily used, this one does have a slightly lower time to kill, and with so many people using the Wormwood style sidearms, you're going to lose a lot of sidearm fights unless you get the first shot off. Not to mention that this archetype also generally has less ammunition in the magazine than the faster rate of fire varieties. When you find yourself spamming shots, sometimes against multiple opponents in rapid succession, you will greatly appreciate those few extra rounds that the other archetypes can provide. While both of the exotic sidearms are burst fire, they offer up extremely differing playstyles. Dreg's Promise is probably the easiest to use since it has a weird feature that causes your rounds to have tracking, similar to a rocket launcher. If you aim down sights, your shots will have a massive amount of aim assist and will be very difficult to dodge. This makes Dreg's Promise an excellent weapon for those that have a high mobility playstyle, as well as ones who may not be able to track targets while aiming as well. The only real drawback is that the rounds have travel time, so you will trade quite often with other sidearm users. The Trespasser is the other exotic sidearm and has an incredibly high stability and somewhat of a different spin on the reactive reload perk. The main perk, Unrepentant, will give you one large super burst that fires 6 rounds in a single burst. If your shots all land on your target's head, it's possible to 2-burst the target. However, it doesn't happen that often, and usually you just pump the burst into someone's body, allowing for another burst to act as quick cleanup. Trespasser doesn't have that increased tracking on shots, so you will have to land your bursts with precision to get the full benefit of this gun. I feel like this is a gun that will reward a skilled hand a little bit more than Dreg's Promise, mainly due to that Unrepentant perk. Finally, I'd like to go over some of the perk suggestions for your legendary sidearm. Most special weapons have very ideal Godrolls that play into their weapon strengths. Sidearms don't really have that, as they're really based around a personal playstyle more than any other weapon. Some players greatly value damage boosting perks like crowd control or reactive reload. Others just prefer to increase the overall consistency of the gun with range and stability increases. So depending on your playstyle, your ideal role will be different from other players. With that being said, here's how I spec my sidearms. I will always get some sort of range increase, whether it be via hammer forged or rangefinder. I avoid things like rifled or reinforced barrels since that messes with the reload or the stability stat. Both of those stats are extremely valuable on any sidearm, so reducing them needs to be heavily weighed when looking at a roll. I do not stack range increasing perks since range is rather easily maxed out on a sidearm. You won't see any real benefit from rangefinder in addition to hammer forged. After that, I will generally get something that either affects ready speed like quick draw or some sort of combat utility perk like high caliber rounds. Both of those are extremely viable perks, but depending on playstyle and what your opponents are using, you might want to swap between them. After that, it gets a little bit difficult to recommend perks since weapons have very different perk trees now. But typically, if there is a damage increase like crowd control or reactive reload, I'd go for it. Reactive reload is going to be best on weapons that have high base reload speeds or are paired with Feeding Frenzy or Outlaw. Crowd control is also good because it doesn't require much upfront investment from you. It can be great for cleaning up kills. Finally, the faster rate of fire archetypes like Wormwood or Conviction really do well with Casket Mag. Adding 3 more rounds to the magazine can really help with killing multiple targets, and if you end up getting that, having something like Zen Moment to help fix the stability will also be a great boon on your pew-pew success. Other perks like Hidden Hand are always good since all sidearms have an incredibly high base aim assist. Increasing that makes them even more viable in the air and helps with hitting opponents that move around a bunch. As one last reminder, just buy the vendor Wormwood. It literally has everything I just talked about. Use hammer forged on it and then swap between quick draw and high caliber rounds as needed. I hope you found this information helpful. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.